Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Bridge of Worlds podcast. I'm your host, Ioannis Kokkinos. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're on YouTube watching, thank you for tuning in. And if you're on one of the podcast platforms, thank you for tuning in as well. So today I want to talk about quite a taboo topic. I've talked about quite a few taboo topics already, but it does connect to last week's episode about spiritual boundaries and what we need to do, or as far as what I've been doing and what I've learned on my journey, as far as protecting energy, protecting the body. And if you're especially on a journey of ancestral healing, I would touch base with last week's episode. So today I will be talking about still spiritual boundaries and protecting one's energy and so on and so forth, but within the context of sex. It's quite loaded, this topic around like setting up a container when it comes to intimacy. So I've talked a little bit about that in my previous episodes, so I will touch base with those as well, as far as the masculine expression and the feminine expression within sexual union and the polarities of each of these expressions. So protection and setting up a space, a safe space, is very pivotal when it comes to sexual union, because sexual energy really doesn't come from us. And what I mean by that is that, yes, we're biologically made to be erotic, to be sexual, and to come together with another human being in this manner, but we're actually channels for this energy, because this energy is universal life force, right? So I've talked about Eros, I've talked about this thread of love, this thread of creation that basically moves and courses through absolutely everything. On the cellular level, on the atomic level, atoms vibrate. We vibrate when we orgasm, we vibrate when we are sexually charged. And so when we actually come into contact with another human being in this manner, in a sexual manner, we are opening up. We're opening up to the universe, we're opening up to the energies that are also non-visible and non-physical. And some of you may not like what I'm saying, or this is news to you. We think that because sex has become so distorted, it's shown in movies, it's shown in shows, it's shown in pornography, the way we think it's supposed to be, or that it's just two people getting turned on, doing the thing, and then like parting ways, or if people are in love, okay, that has its own container. But again, in order for a container to be set up, and I'm talking about an energetic container, we need to be conscious of that. And by that, I mean we need to have a certain awareness of what it is we're bringing to the space and how we're connecting with another human being. So I have said in previous episodes that sex can be meditative, and sex can be meditative because it really is about witnessing this primal force, this universal life force that runs through us without judgment. So again, when we are coming into union with another human being, we are opening up and we are expanding our energy field. Somebody else is coming into our field. We are entering someone else's field. So before we get to, right, like opening up to the universe and the non-physical and the non-tangible, we also have to know the energy of the person that we're coming into contact with, right? So this is the whole nature of intimacy, is coming close with another human being. And usually it starts off mentally, emotionally, and then the physical stuff happens. So in order for basically a container to be set up, I guess I'll start here, is basically to have communication between the partners and the lovers and really know what it is each person is bringing to the space. Now, obviously, sex doesn't always work like that. It isn't always to like sit down and have a conversation. Sometimes it's very spontaneous, right? Impulsive. And There's nothing wrong with that. But ideally, those spontaneous and impulsive scenarios should happen with someone you know and really has done some form of inner work, because you will be exchanging energies. And boundaries here are obviously all kinds of crossed, right? We're literally merging with another human being physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So obviously all kinds of lines will be blurred. So when we are merging, when we are uniting with another human being, we want to make sure that their energy, they're tending to their energy. Obviously, this is not about perfection or they have to be 100% healed. You don't have to be 100% healed. Nobody has to be 100% healed in order for this to take place. But ideally, you are exchanging energy with another human being, and that other being is also exchanging energy with you. So here, communication is necessary. Setting up a container is necessary. It's probably, especially in the beginning, after obviously doesn't have to happen each time. But because we're opening up not just to the other person, but we're opening up really like to the universe and to the universal life force of creation, because we are channels for this life force. Each and every one of us has a unique nature, yes. And it's also how our nature channels that energy. So it is very important to be well aware of this when it comes to sexual union, because just like when we are meditating, right, and we're opening up our centers, we're opening up our chakras, and we're opening up to the field, the Akashic field, to the astral, to the etheric, to the realm of deities, archetypes, ancestors, saints, spirits, we're opening up to the lower stuff as well. So we have to be very mindful of how we're showing up with our energy, how our partner's showing up with their energy. And really, because there's so much healing potential when it comes to sexual union, there's actually nothing more um, potent, I believe, than two conscious beings coming into union and using their sexuality consciously to heal any type of wound, to transmute any type of pain, because this is the universal life force of creation, and creation is destruction that is recreation. So if we learn and eventually practice cultivating this energy and how to really use it, not just to get off, not just for pleasure, not just for climax, but actually use this orgasmic, vibrational, creative energy as a source for healing, transformation, transmutation, and even transcendence, then I think we've unlocked the golden chest. There is a lot of sexual trauma happening collectively. There has been a lot of sexual trauma happening collectively. Watching pornography at very intense and compulsive levels can be a form of sexual trauma. As I talked about in those episodes, we do absorb energy, right? Just because we're sitting behind a screen, it doesn't matter uh, really whatsoever, because our brain doesn't know the difference. So we are exchanging with these people on screen, and we're exchanging energies. More, we're actually just taking. They don't know we're watching, they don't know who we are, but we watch them, we watch these scenes. So obviously they have some form of energy, some form of nature that they are embodying and expressing. Obviously through pornography, we have absolutely no idea if the person's doing the work, how much they've healed their traumas, if their sexual expression is coming from a authentic, organic source, or is it just performing, right? Is it just performance? Is it just for the cameras and the lights? So we're taking all of that in, right? Now, as far as like watching pornography leisurely, many of you may not like this. Just because you're watching porn does not mean you're addicted. If it does control your life, then yes, you are addicted. But even, let's say, if you're not addicted and you're watching leisurely, you're still absorbing energies. And it can be totally unconscious, right? So this was like the case with me. It was totally unconscious for many, many, many years. I obviously became conscious of it way later, but the imprints were already there. So I had to do a lot of work to transform those imprints and to get rid of these imprints. that like porn left on my body and my mind and my energy. So that's porn, right? But then obviously there's a lot of trauma at the hands of many civilizations across the ages. Sex magic is something I want to talk about as well. These are practices that still happen around the globe. Sex magic is more of a modernized way of basically saying like using sexual energy to manifest, because sexual energy is creative energy. So a lot of the practices, a lot of the ancient civilizations, a lot of the rituals, even a few branches of Tantra, right, use sexuality as a form of manifesting. And what did I say last week? Manifesting is a more modernized word of practicing magic. So sex magic is very real, like in the sense that it is being practiced across the globe, across many cultures, probably a lot more so in ancient civilizations. But what happened was when the modern day religions started to come into form, all that was severely suppressed, and not only suppressed but also demonized, right? And again, just like every expression of life, there's a dual nature of things, right? So there's the benevolent expression of sacred sexuality and showing up consciously and wanting to connect with another human being, or wanting to connect with this energy as a form of healing, as a form of raising consciousness, as a form of transforming, right? Everything I talked about before. But then there's the malevolent expression of, let's say, sex magic, which is also very real, still being practiced to this day by many people. And when I say a malevolent expression of sacred sexuality, is using sexuality as a form of control, abuse, and misuse of power. So obviously we see that in porn. That's happening much more behind the scenes, because obviously with the cameras, the lights, and the perfect angles, we don't know that that's what's going on. But in hardcore pornography, there's all sorts of shadow expression of sexuality. And the shadow shows up everywhere, right? The shadow can show up in other addictions, in other compulsions, in other vices, but the shadow can most definitely show up in sexuality as well. So it's not to say that sacred sexuality is like the antidote to, let's say, the modern day religions that have demonized sex for many centuries, right? So everything has a shadow. Just because that was suppressed does not make it wrong, but even though it was suppressed, because it was used in ritual as a form to connect to the higher spirit, the higher source, the universe, right? It's the channel, it's the universal life force of creation. It's not to say that that can't also be used through its shadow expression, or unhealthily, and even in very harmful and toxic ways. We see shadow expression of sexuality through rape, through abuse, through manipulation, basically non-consensual connection. So all this has been going on for many centuries, right? And it is alive in the collective unconscious, right? That's what the collective unconscious is. It's all of the threads of consciousness that have passed through the ages. So when I talked about last week how we are opening up and we even are connecting to our ancestors, we are tuning into what's gone through the collective unconscious. And obviously, this is massive, right? This is like thousands and millions of years of evolution and consciousness. I'm not saying that each and every one of us taps into that, but depending on our traumas, depending on what we signed up for, depending on what we're moving through in life, obviously, whatever we're struggling with will resonate with something within the collective unconscious. So, because sexual trauma is so prominent in the collective, and because even now, in the year 2025, sex is still so shamed. And especially we look to our religious institutions, we're still being told to suppress this part of ourselves. And it's not at all to be suppressed. But then again, it's not at all to be misused, right? So when we are opening up sexually with another human being, it is so, so crucial that we are also making sure that what's coming in is not lower vibrational in nature as far as sexuality is concerned. Because let me tell you, and you're probably not going to want to hear this, when you're watching pornography, that is a huge portal, that's a huge door opening for lower entities to enter your energy and field, especially entities that are sexual in nature. They will attach to you because that is what you are vibrating at. You are taking on the people's energies behind the screen, and you lose more and more and more control. Now, of course, this does depend how attuned you are psychically, how energy sensitive you are. You know, it's not one formula for everybody. There are men who watch porn and have no issues, as so they say. I have no idea. I can't speak for these men. I speak for myself and my journey, and because of my journey, have read and spoke with many men that have dealt with porn addiction and pornography. And obviously, yes, we say it's addiction, right? It's a form of addiction. We lose control, it controls us. But because it is the most powerful force of creation, it is the powerful force of creation, and it is an expression of love, right? To have sex, to make eros, to come into union with another is an expression of love. And we know that having this kind of union can also be expression very much about not love, but about control, pleasure, instant gratification, hedonism, right? It's not about the union. It's not about shared intimacy. It's about my pleasure and it's about their pleasure. And they only give a shit about their pleasure. I only give a shit about my pleasure. So, yeah, it's very easy to have this union and it not being at all about love, but the nature of sex, the nature of two human beings coming together is to make eros, is to make love, right? So this is how we know that really love is the center of everything and how love is the most powerful force of creation because everything is communing through love. But when we're talking about the physical aspect, we're talking about eros. So be very mindful when it comes to your spiritual boundaries, when it comes to sex, even masturbating. So obviously, masturbating is like its own fucking, demonized thing. Like masturbating is wrong and this, that. Masturbating done unconsciously won't do shit for you. It's literally instant gratification. Okay, you need the hit, quote unquote, right, to get on with yourself. But if you learn to masturbate consciously, and what do I mean by that is really witnessing and holding space for your sexual energy, all kinds of miraculous healing breakthroughs, somatic breakthroughs can happen. Sexual energy, orgasmic energy is vibrational energy, right? So we are channels for this energy. We know that this energy is all day, all night, every day, every night, working and moving and coursing through everything. Everything's vibrating. So when we start to learn how to really, really be with this energy, be with our body, don't have to have a partner, really become intimate with ourselves to the point of knowing I am a spiritual being, I am an energetic being that has a physical body. But this thread of creation, this sexual energy, this erotic energy that courses through me is something that I have in order to create life. And yes, the foundational aim of having sexual energy is to create life, is to make a baby. But we don't always have to make a baby in order to come into relationship with the energy in this manner, right? So if I want to create something consciously, if I want to will something into existence, I can use my sexual energy, I can use my creative energy. And this is quote unquote sex magic. It is a thing. It is possible because everything is consciousness, right? So when we are conscious with our sexual energy, we're not just getting off for the sake of getting off, or going after hit for the sake of going after a hit. And we stay with the energy, we move with the energy, we emote with the energy, we emotionally release with the energy, because that's what the energy will do. That vibrational orgasmic energy will go to the cellular level, go into the most unconscious spaces and emotions within our bodies, and literally bring it to the surface so that it can be released, so that it can be transformed. So when we are practicing this alone, when we are practicing this with our partners, with our lovers, we have to be very mindful of our boundaries. And here, when I say boundaries, I mean to the boundaries of the non-physical and the intangible, because there are higher creative forces that can serve us and that can help us, but then there are also destructive and lower forces that can actually just feed off of us. There are entities and there are energies that are sexual in nature, but they're very much trauma based, because there's a lot of trauma that has passed through the ages when it comes to sexuality, whether it's religion, whether it's culture, whether it's hidden occult rituals, pornography, right, which is probably the most recent. So it is absolutely crucial to be mindful of this when you are tapping into that part of yourself, because this body is temporary and we need to treat it with the utmost respect. And we also need to have the utmost responsibility when it comes to our sexual energy. Our sexual energy is the God force. So when we say God and like God created the universe, that's sexual energy. So we need to be very responsible because it is very powerful. It's powerful energy. And some of us have other things to do with sexual energy than besides just, the typical conventional life. Some of us have been traumatized sexually, and we need to offer sexuality as a modality of healing. Some have been very traumatized by sex and need to become healed by sex. But obviously, this needs to be set up with the proper containers, with the proper rituals. With the proper container in place and the proper ritual in place, someone that has been traumatized sexually can be totally healed and liberated sexually. That person is not going to go to a therapist or, go through the conventional channels or, like talk it out, quote unquote, because the trauma is so somatic and so deep in nature and sexual in nature that it is through the act of sex, the act of communing with the sexual energy that will bring liberation. The wound holds the medicine, right? So it's not about re-traumatizing. So obviously in containers and in rituals where they're not set up properly, that will just perpetuate the trauma. But if like intention comes in and consciousness and witnessing and safety comes into the picture, consent, that's where the healing is. And you know what? I don't think this is only a modality of healing for the sexually traumatized. Because even though, let's say, you were not sexually traumatized in this life, this energy that you carry is still the creative life force of the universe. And you can harness it, you can use it to promote all kinds of healing within your mind, body, soul, and spirit. And boundaries are needed. We need to protect our space. We need to protect our body and our energy when we are opening up to the universe. The universe is benevolent in nature, right? Like the reason why lower entities and lower energies exist and duality, right? This is why duality exists. We need the lower stuff to get to the higher stuff. But the core nature of the universe is love. The core nature of the universe is oneness. And Oneness means that everything unites to become one. How do we express that as human beings? Through sex, through erotic union. The two become one. The universe is benevolent because the universe is love. The universe is consciousness. But duality happened. The split happened. But we need to work with the split. We need to work with the one side to get to the other side. So at the end of the day, really, like that's what we have to remember and what we have to tap into, no matter what the suffering, no matter what the low, dense, heavy vibration, energy, entity, no matter what the wound, right? That is our door. That is our way back to God. That is our way back to the source. It is through the wound. It is through the pain that we have to move through in order to get back to the source. So really everything is love. Everything is oneness. And I guess that's really what we have to remember when we are opening up, when we are meditating, when we are masturbating consciously, when we are coming into sexual union with another human being. Yeah, the traumas are there. Yeah, we're human and we have our pains and like what we've been through, but like the potential for healing and the potential for realizing creation really just lies in that remembrance. And sexuality is so shamed. Like it could be just so triggering to hear the word sex. It can be so triggering to hear the word sexuality, sacred sexuality, sex magic, right? This can all be so triggering, but that's a program running inside your body and mind that really has nothing to do with the truth. It's just something that you learned along the way. And just because it's triggering, it doesn't mean you avoid it. It doesn't mean you ignore it. Our triggers is where our shadow shows up. Where our shadow shows up is where we have to go. And it's probably not all yours, right? Like the traumas, especially sexual trauma and like the generational shame and generational guilt around sexuality, that of course comes from so many before us. What they learned, the societies they grew up in, the religions they followed, right? The collective consciousness they were a part of, the collective unconscious they were tapping into without knowing they were tapping into it. We've come to the front lines now with all of that, and what matters is what we decide to do now. And not just with sex, not just with sexuality, but with everything, whatever it is you're moving through. My journey happens to be very sexuality centric. So this is why I bring it to the space. And it's not comfortable. It's not easy for me. It's probably not easy for you, or maybe it is. But if it's not easy for you, that's the point. I'm not here to make it easy for you. I'm here to challenge you. Because that's where the growth is. That's where the wisdom is. So I'm going to leave it here. I think that's enough food for thought. Um, yeah, that feels complete. So thank you for tuning in. If you're on YouTube watching, please hit that like, subscribe button. I so greatly appreciate it. Share the content in any way you feel called. Also, if you're on one of the podcast platforms, please share as well. Reach out to me. As you can send a text. I'm also on social media. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook. I'd love to see you over there as well. If you have something to share, please throw it down in the YouTube comments or on social media. I will be back next week, as always, here on Bridger of Worlds every Thursday. And in closing, please remember that you are the medicine and I am just the messenger. Thank you very much.